Hello, I'm Helena Humphrey, and this is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing, bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 63 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Well, in the next 20 minutes or so, we will be live with our correspondents in Washington, Jerusalem, New York, and here in London. Well, let's start with some of the day's key developments. President Trump says that he is not satisfied with proposals from Iran. Reports say that Tehran has delivered a new plan to Pakistan, which is mediating between the two sides.
So they want to make a deal, but I'm not satisfied with it, so we'll see what happens. Iran wants to make a deal because they have no military left, essentially, and they want to make a deal, but I'm not satisfied with it.
Is the US military campaign about to restart? Options are being drawn up for President Trump, with reports that military commanders have requested hypersonic missiles to be deployed to the Middle East. There's a stark warning about the impact of the war on global food supplies. The head of a giant fertiliser firm says that could cost up to 10 billion meals a week. We speak to the British couple imprisoned in Iran. Craig and Lindsay Foreman fear that the conflict continuing means that they are likely to be there for a long time.
My biggest wish would for me and Lindsay to be free to attend my son's wedding on the 22nd of July. That is my biggest hope. Deep down, I can't see it happening myself.
And the boss of world football says that Iran will play at the World Cup to be held in the US, Canada and Mexico. Well, first today, in the last hour, President Trump has said that he is not satisfied with proposals from Iran. President Trump made the comments as he left the White House. Iranian state media say that Tehran has delivered its latest proposal for negotiations with the US to Pakistan, which is mediating between the two sides. Well, earlier today, the head of Iran's judiciary said that Tehran remained open to talks, but would not accept the imposition of conditions under threats. Well, here's what President Trump told reporters.
They've made strides, but I'm not sure if they ever get there. There's tremendous discord. They're having a tremendous problem getting along with each other in Iran. The leadership is very disjointed. It's got 2 to 3 groups, maybe 4, and it's a very disjointed leadership. And with that being said, they all want to make a deal, but they're all messed up.
Now, President Trump's comments come after new indications that the United States may be preparing to restart military operations. The key waterway of the Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed and peace negotiations have stalled. And the latest reports suggest that US Central Command has requested the deployment of hypersonic missiles to the Middle East to add to an enormous military deployment which is already in the region.
The yeas are 47, the nays are 50, and the motion is not agreed to.
Meanwhile, US lawmakers in the Senate rejected a 6th attempt by Democrats to curb President Trump's authority to continue the war in Iran. A deadline of 60 days has now passed for the White House to secure authorization from the US Congress. Well, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says that the current ceasefire means that the clock paused on a deadline to seek approval. While in Israel, the country's defense minister has warned that the country may have to act once again in order to ensure that Iran does not once again become a threat to Israel. Meanwhile, Iran says that it will respond with long and painful strikes on US bases if Washington renews its attacks. Well, let's speak now to Shaima Khalil in Washington and John Donison in Jerusalem. Very good to see you both. Shaima, firstly to you, what do you make of President Trump's comments? And is Washington planning to restart military action?
Look, there are many strands to this that have come together today. The mood music from the Trump administration, from Donald Trump himself. He's clearly not happy with what Iran has proposed, the newest proposals from Tehran to Pakistan, who's been acting as a mediator. I think it's been very clear that he has less appetite to send his envoys We saw that there were some inklings of them going to Pakistan only last week, and then by the weekend it was cancelled. Now he's saying outright that he's unhappy with these proposals. We also heard from the Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi, who says that Tehran is ready to pursue diplomacy if the U.S. changes its excessive demands, threatening rhetoric and provocative actions. And then we hear from reporting about CENTCOM briefing President Trump about the different military options that they can take against Iran. And that also tells you that the Trump administration is growing frustrated and impatient with the stalemate that's happening in negotiations and may want to pursue more pressure on Iran. The reporting in U.S. media says that the president is looking at either a wave of strong strikes aimed at infrastructure or aiming to look at taking a portion of the Strait of Hormuz to ease navigation there. Either way, if you're looking at those strikes, it doesn't take into account Iranian retaliation. We've learned from before the ceasefire that Iran retaliates against its neighbors in the Gulf, against U.S. interests in the region. If you're going to take a portion of the Strait of Hormuz, that requires boots on the ground, and that will be seen as a significant development. But you're also not guaranteed that the shipping companies are going to be confident in that option and that it is indeed going to ease shipping. One other thing to bring is that when you're looking at what's happening right now, yes, there is a ceasefire, which means the bombing has stopped. But as far as Iran is concerned, the U.S. has violated that ceasefire because the U.S. blockade on Iranian waters, on Iranian ports continues. And what it has managed is that it has managed to stifle the economy, to make it increasingly difficult for the people inside Iran. What it hasn't managed is to bring the Iranians to the negotiating table.
John, to you there in Israel, the Israeli Defense Minister has been speaking openly about the war continuing. Is there much support for that?
I think there's definitely an appetite within the Israeli government for the war to resume. Israel Katz, the defense minister, is saying that it may be necessary for Israel to act again to remove the threat it sees from Iran. And you have to remember that Israel did not really want this ceasefire when it started. I think there was an appetite to continue then, and they went along with this ceasefire because that's what Donald Trump wanted. Such was the level of economic turmoil that was beginning to affect the world. So I think, yes, the Israelis think there is more to be done. The government here has faced some criticism, especially from the right, saying that they didn't achieve the war aims, they didn't eradicate entirely Iran's nuclear ambitions, they did not get hold of the enriched uranium, they reduced Iran's military capabilities, but they didn't remove the threat. And of course, they didn't bring regime change. But when push comes to shove, I don't think the Israelis will act without America's backing. And Israel is not directly involved in these negotiations that Pakistan is mediating, but of course, they are talking to the Americans.
John Scheimer, very good to talk to you both. Thank you. Well, let's now turn to the economic impact of the war and the warning today that some 10 billion meals a week are at risk globally because of the conflict. Well, it's because of the interruption to fertiliser supplies and its key ingredients due to the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And the boss of one of the world's biggest fertilisers producers has told the BBC that it will be the poorest countries that will be hit the hardest. Well, we can discuss this more now with our business correspondent, Ben King. Ben, explain firstly why we are seeing those rising fertiliser costs and what this will mean for food security.
Well, that's right. We've heard a lot about how the Gulf is a key supplier of energy, petrol, gas, jet fuel and so forth. But the Gulf is actually a key supplier of many of the other things on which modern life depends as well, including fertiliser, which is, of course, vital for food production. Now, Svein Holsetter, the president and chief executive of Yara International, the giant fertiliser firm, spoke to the BBC, and he gave a stark warning, as you say, about the impact that the conflict was having on fertiliser supplies from the Gulf. Here's what he said.
It could be that we're up to about 500,000 tons of of nitrogen fertilizer not being produced in the world right now because of this situation that we're in. And if I try to translate that into, okay, so what does that mean for food production? And again, using some standard calculations on that, I would get to up to 10 billion meals that will not be produced every week as a result of lack of fertilizers. If there is a global auction on food where we're competing for food, Europe has strong financials, UK as well, in order to support the population, but that's not the case in other parts of the world. So we should be conscious about, in that situation, who are we buying the food away from? And again, it's the most vulnerable that will pay the highest price.
Well, Ben, of course, as we know, there are still an awful lot of ships that are stuck, and that is having a knock-on effect.
That's right. We were hearing about the most vulnerable people, though. The absolutely most vulnerable people are also being affected by this right now. The United Nations Refugee Agency warned today that it was having trouble getting supplies of aid from Dubai, which is, of course, a major port, to some of the conflict zones in Africa where it supports people, Sudan and Chad. It said the cost of shipping to those places has more than doubled. And, of course, the time it takes to get there, it's having to take overland routes through Aqaba in Jordan or through Oman to get to those places, and that's delaying shipments of aid. This, of course, causing particular difficulties for an agency which is struggling with the withdrawal of support by some of the major donors, so making it even more difficult to deliver that vital aid to people in conflict zones in Africa.
Our business correspondent, Ben King. Ben, thanks for that. Well, we've seen the price of oil rise during the conflict, and today two more energy firms, ExxonMobil and Chevron, say that they expect to see much bigger profits lying ahead. We can go live now to New York and speak to our business correspondent there, Samira Hussein. Samira, I mean, clearly the rising price of oil is a boon for some.
Absolutely. When it comes to oil-producing companies, the high prices for oil is obviously going to be a net gain for them. And what is interesting is that we already saw a lot of investment going into these kinds of oil companies before the war started because of the AI boom and just the requirements for energy. But now with this increase to the price of oil, you're seeing this direct impact when it comes to the fortunes of some of these oil companies. However, it's important to note the cascading impact of these high oil prices on everyone else. Maybe some good news for some companies, but for the majority, this huge fluctuations that you've been seeing in the price of oil is really not beneficial at all. In fact, is hitting the average consumer quite significantly.
Samira, we've also seen today reports that Iran has handed over those new peace proposals to Pakistan. Is that having an impact on the markets?
So the markets, when it comes to the price of oil, and when I talk about oil, I'm talking about Brent crude, just remember back to February, before the war started. We saw that Brent crude was trading around $65 to $70 a barrel. Well, just on Thursday, we saw that that price of oil spiked to almost $126 a barrel. Now, today, it is trading at $108 a barrel. That is a huge amount of volatility, and it changes with every changing facet of what's happening diplomatically. And we heard from Shaima and we heard from John in Jerusalem talking about all the back and forth that's happening, or sometimes the no back and forth. Well, with all of those machinations, the price of oil has an impact too.
Our business correspondent there, Samira Hussein in New York. Samira, thanks a lot. Well, caught in the middle of the tumultuous events of the past few weeks in Iran are a British couple, Lindsay and Craig Foreman. Now, they were arrested in January 2025. They were accused of spying and sentenced in February to some 10 years in prison. The government has described their incarceration, the government here in the UK, as appalling. And until last August, relatives had heard nothing from them. But now they have been able to call out of Evin prison to a British Foreign Office number, which then patches them through to their family. The phone lines are difficult and do keep getting cut off. But our diplomatic correspondent, Caroline Hawley, has been able to speak to them.
They were excited to be in Iran, no hint of the trouble that lay ahead.
I'm in Iran having an amazing time.
We're super grateful for being here, just in this lovely country with these lovely people.
The couple were travelling from Europe to Australia. She's a life coach, asking people along the way what it means to lead a good life and posting about their journey. Now the only way their voice reaches the outside world is via phone calls with their family.
I'm with Lindsay and Craig's son Joe, and we are waiting for them to call in by payphone from Evin jail, where they are both serving 10-year sentences. Now, they were on a global motorbike tour and they crossed into Iran. They were only planning to spend a few days. They were arrested and accused of spying, which they say is absolute nonsense.
Hello, I'm with Caroline, Mum. I'll let her say hello.
Yeah, hi Lindsay. How are you today?
I'm just kind of dealing with the realisation that we are likely to be here for a long time yet.
Lindsay, I know you were aware of Foreign Office advice not to go to Iran, but could never have imagined you would wind up in this situation. I wonder if you have regrets.
The short answer is no, and Craig and I have discussed this, and we did research prior to coming and assessed the risk.
Hi Craig, I hope you're okay.
Hiya, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you, more to the point?
Yeah, not too bad, you know. Bearing up.
How about you?
Yeah.
Do you wish you'd never crossed the border from Armenia into Iran?
No, I'm glad that we came on this journey together. You know, we're in a horrible position right now, but we have met some fabulous people on the way. Yeah, we have seen both sides of this country firsthand. I have seen 4 of my friends that have been removed and executed for, you know, a crime in England or a different country. You may have got a caution.
4 of your cellmates have been executed?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
4 people have been taken. And I know they've been executed because they publicise it on the TV the next day.
And what is your biggest wish, your biggest hope?
My biggest wish would for me and Lindsay to be free to attend my son's wedding on the 22nd of July. That is my biggest hope. You know, deep down, I can't see it happening myself. But just, I guess, wish for some action or hope for some action from our government back at home to try and speed up this process. As you know, I just feel as if we are wasting our lives in here and rotting away to a degree.
I wonder how you stay positive.
Well, I thank God I studied positive psychology, because without that, I don't know. There's people who've been here for years, and it's shockingly unjust.
You okay, Lindsay? I'm so sorry.
We can do this. We will do this. We'll get through it together. And sometime, I hope soon, we will be on the other side of these 4 walls. So stay strong, my love.
Caroline Hawley there talking to Craig and Lindsay Foreman. Now, could the war impact the World Cup later this year? Well, the head of World Football says that Iran, who have qualified, will play. Gianni Infantino made the comment as FIFA met for its annual Congress in Canada.
Iran will be participating at the FIFA World Cup 2026. And of course, Iran will play in the United States of America.
Now, President Trump was asked a question about Iran being at the World Cup during a White House event. Take a listen.
A little while ago, the president of FIFA said that when the World Cup is here in the U.S., the team from Iran will be playing in the games.
Well, if Johnny said it, I'm okay. Are you did Johnny say it?
He did. What if they
Johnny
win?
Infantino, that's a piece of work.
What if they win?
Well, if they win, we'll have to worry about that. That's not... I'm going to have to worry about that one. Look, you know what? Let him play well. Johnny's fantastic. You know, he's a friend of mine. And he talked about it. I said, you do whatever you want. You can have him. You don't have to have him. Probably have a good team. I don't know. Do they have a good team? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
would be hard to believe, actually. But I think let them play.
Well, finally, let's pause to look at the bigger picture as we are now into the third month of this war. With me is special correspondent for BBC Persian, Kasra Naji. As always, very good to have you in the programme. You know, firstly, I want to ask you, what are you hearing about reports from Tehran that it has passed on to Pakistan this new set of peace proposals?
Yes, interesting that the reports from Iran say that this message from Iran to Pakistan was passed on last night. And in the last hour or two, President Trump in Washington has been talking about it, and he says he's not satisfied with it. And that is ominous in a sense that, you know, if he says he's not satisfied, it means that we're back to square one in terms of preparation for war. And we know that the preparations have been stepped up by the US forces, and the likelihood of resumption of war is a lot higher now.
So what is the sense from Iran that it can dig in all of this? We are now in the third month of this war, you know, not just when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, but also, of course, on this key question at the center of it, the nuclear issue.
Yes, the Iranians, the hardliners in Iran, let's say, they think they have the upper hand and they don't need to negotiate, particularly on the nuclear issue. But I think there are cooler heads within the Iranian leadership today who believe that they should negotiate and even negotiate about the nuclear issue up to a point. In its latest proposals from Iran to America via Pakistan, we don't know what's in it, but I assume that they are talking about a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and Americans lifting their blockade too as an immediate issue, but also maybe talking about the nuclear issue. When I'm saying up to a point, it's that, you know, the leadership is under a lot of pressure within Iran, and that this program, the nuclear issue, is not for sale. Is not for compromise on. So there have to be a compromise there somehow, but that hasn't happened yet. And President Trump says he's not happy with the latest situation. So I presume we are back to square one now.
And indeed, if that is the case, what does this mean for the Iranian people who listen to this rhetoric, who are experiencing economic pain, threats when it comes to dissent?
War and economic pain, these are the two issues at the forefront of people's minds in Iran. War, of course, you know, you never know whether you're going to end up under the rubble once it starts, wherever you are. So that's a real sort of a concern. And the second concern is the war has damaged Iran's economy in a major way. Iran's currency has fallen to a record low, which means that prices have gone up even in the last 2 weeks, 10 weeks, 10 days a week. We have seen prices of basic commodities like chicken, like rice, like cooking oil, have gone up by 20%, 25%.
Our special correspondent from BBC Persian, Kasra Naji, very good to talk to you. Well, whether you are joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thank you for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.